1 million Palestinians in northern Gaza face an Israeli deadline today to flee south. South Africa's population has increased from 51.7 million in 2011 to 62 million in 2022. Quality assurance body Umalusi says it's ready to administer the 2023 matric examination. A very good afternoon. If you've just joined us, we're coming to you live from our studios here in Johannesburg. Welcome to the Week in Review. Now, this is the program where we review some of the biggest stories to come out of the week. I'm your host, Mfundo Mabala. The ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has pledged the party's solidarity with Palestine. He's attending an ANC National Executive Committee meeting in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg. Now, more than 1 million Palestinians in northern Gaza face an Israeli deadline today to flee south.
As you can see, this is the National Executive Committee. All of us standing here, pledging our solidarity with the people of Palestine. We stand here because we are deeply concerned about the atrocities that are unfolding in the Middle East, and we have passed our condolences to the people of Israel as we are passing our condolences to the people of Palestine. And we have a full understanding of how the people of Palestine have taken up this issue, because they are people, as many countries and leaders in the world have opined, that they have been under occupation for almost 75 years. And people under occupation who have been waging a struggle against an oppressive government that has occupied their land, but also a government that has in recent times been dubbed an apartheid state. As people and an organization that has struggled against an oppressive system of apartheid, we do pledge solidarity with the Palestinians. And as the African National Congress, we have always pledged our solidarity with them, and we've always insisted that the only solution for the problems in the Middle East, particularly between Israel and Palestine, is a two-state solution based on the 1967 borders as approved by the world community and the United Nations. Now, the violation of the rights of the Palestinians, that has manifested itself through the occupation of their land, through bringing in settlers so close and into their land, is something that is causing a great deal of concern and has possibly sparked off this conflict that is now unfolding. The atrocities that are happening now, where the residences of people in that part of the world are being razed to the floor, pregnant mothers are not even able to give birth in a respectable manner, hospitals are being razed to the floor. But the worst part is when the Israeli government now says 1.1 million people must evacuate the northern part of Gaza. As you know, this is an unfolding situation, and it changes hour by hour. Our government agencies, our international relations department, as well as our intelligence services and our defense intelligence services are monitoring the situation on an ongoing basis. So standing here is the leadership of the African National Congress expressing our concern about what's unfolding unfolding on all sides, but pledging our solidarity with the Palestinians because they have a just struggle and their human rights are being violated, as well as their quest for self-determination is something that we have always supported. So thank you very much for being here and being part of this pledging of solidarity with the people of Palestine.
Carrying mattresses and personal belongings, residents of Gaza City were seen walking south on Friday after Israel ordered more than 1 million people to leave the northern half of the Gaza Strip within 24 hours. Israel said troops backed by tanks had carried out raids inside the Gaza Strip Friday. That was its first announcement of a shift from an air war to ground operations in order to root out Hamas fighters a week after their deadly rampage in southern Israel. Hamas, which controls the densely populated area, told Gaza residents to stay put despite Israel's deadline. Mosques broadcast the message, hold on to your homes, hold on to your land. While many residents said they would not go, several thousand people could be seen on roads heading out of the northern part of the Gaza Strip, but it was impossible to tell their exact numbers. The United Nations said Israel's call for Gaza civilians, over 1 million of them, to leave was possible to carry out, quote, without devastating humanitarian consequences. Here's UN spokesman Rolando Gomez.
The United Nations strongly appeals for any such order to be rescinded, avoiding what could transform what is already a tragic situation into a calamitous situation.
Israel rebuked the UN statement, saying it should condemn Hamas and support Israel's right to self-defense. Since Hamas fighters burst across the barrier fence and killed 1,300 Israelis on Saturday, Israel has responded with the most intensive airstrikes of its 75-year conflict with the Palestinians. Gaza authorities say 1,800 people have been killed. The United Nations says 400,000 people have already been made homeless.
All right, we're now joined by Dr. Petrus de Kock, risk analyst and director at RiskCon, and also co-author of the book Emerging New World Disorder. Doctor, good afternoon, and thank you very much for your time. So it's now a week since that unexpected attack by Hamas, an attack that we've seen this week that the U.S. says was far too sophisticated for Hamas, suggesting that perhaps Iran, their longtime ally, could have assisted them, something that Iran has denied, although they have commended them for that attack. Where do you stand on this? Was it far too sophisticated for Hamas, or they have actually been training for this very moment?
Good afternoon, and thank you for the invite. This is a hugely multi-layered issue, not just affecting Israel and Gaza, but especially countries like Syria, Iran, Lebanon, and so forth. But just to your question, I think there's been evidence of actually Palestinian forces training for this attack. For example, there's some U.S. sources indicating that there's information of Hamas soldiers, for example, practicing with the microlights that they use to, for example, fly into Israeli territory and launch part of the attack. So I think it's not too sophisticated for Hamas, and most likely there was support, and most likely not only from Iran, but perhaps from other sources as well in the region. Because we must understand, if you look over the border from Israel just into Syria, for example, since 2011, 830 military bases are in Syria, occupied by Iraqi, Afghanistan, Iranian, Russian, American forces, you name it. So you already have a constellation of major mobilization of military force just inside Syria that is, of course, also completely opposed to the Israeli state. So I think, for sure, assistance from the outside. But now everybody is pointing a finger at Iran, and we must be very careful that the war hawks in Israel, London, Washington, they are going to be the ones who are going to be chomping at the bit to attack Iran, because that's been the objective from the time of George W. Bush.
Mm-hmm. Then to the divergent views. I mean, we've all seen that a number of countries stand on different sides of this particular conflict. But what is not being debated is at least the humanitarian crisis that is deepening now. Even UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned about this. Could you say this is possibly going to be that turning point in this Middle East conflict?
This is a significant moment. This is one of those moments like the Nakba of 1948, the catastrophe after the establishment of the State of Israel and the attacks on Palestinians and the displacement of people. Look at the news. You carried in your clip before we started discussing. More than 1 million Palestinians are now forced to flee to southern Gaza. But the problem is then people fleeing are being attacked.
And again, that's something. Apologies for interjecting.
Sorry,
yes, again that's something that the UN Secretary General warned about, that you've got 1 million plus people that you are instructing as Israeli forces to evacuate within 24 hours. Is it even possible without creating a crisis there? And then there was also a different message from Palestinian forces who told them you must stay indoors.
Exactly. And I think your viewers may know the term when people talk about Gaza, and this is not to be flippant. Gaza is classified basically already before this as the world's biggest open-air prison. Now, honestly, in that little slice of territory, you are now pushing more than 1 million people, not just out of their homes, but you are flattening whole neighborhoods. The images, especially carried on Al Jazeera, for example, it is absolutely ridiculous, the level of complete blanket destruction that is being wreaked in Gaza. And this is why I think some analysts, not just in the region, but in the world, and as you said, some countries for, some countries against, but we just cannot tolerate this type of absolute human rights abuse. This is beyond even human rights abuse. This is atrocity that is being committed.
Then to South Africa's position, not to conflate the party and state. Let's start with the statement that was issued by the president of the country. That statement basically, when one combs through it, was stating that there needs to be a de-escalation of the violence, granted, and to perhaps allow for there to be less conflict in this particular moment. But when one looks at it, there's still a solidarity with the people of Palestine, similar to the African National Congress. That's where they stand. What do you make of that position, particularly now?
No, it makes perfect sense in the context of the ANC's history, that it has always stood with the Palestinians and the Palestinian struggle. And so as a government now, that's government policy or the government stance as well on that point. However, one could make a comment, to say, yes, in the ideal world, we would like to see a de-escalation of the conflict. However, the Israeli Minister of Defense in the last 2 days basically announcing we will cut electricity, we will cut water, we will cut the flow of fuel, we will cut the flow of food. There was a threat made on an Egyptian aid convoy in the last few days where the Egyptians were sending aid into Gaza, and the Israelis basically said, move forward with your convoy and we will be bombing you as well. So who is the perpetrator, not just of military violence on civilians, but also the perpetrator of cutting food, cutting flow of medical supplies, destruction of hospitals, in a time where on the screen now, I'm looking at the numbers on Al Jazeera, already we have not just 1,300 Israelis there, but 3,400 8,700 Palestinians already in the matter of a few days, not even talking about the injured of that. So the point I'm trying to make is, we are dealing not just with a major turning point, but we really need to watch the temperature in the region, because this is also coming at an interesting time geopolitically. Very recently, China brokered a deal for normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran. I think the world still do not really understand the significance of the Chinese brokering that rapprochement. So what that also means is that each and every incident of conflict in the region, you now also have a different power dynamic by major powers in the region. China, for example, Russia has been involved in the Syrian conflict on invitation of Syria since 2016. So you already have the world's major powers either diplomatically or in the form of active military force, basically active on the Israeli border. So the escalation of this can look really ugly if this goes further. And clearly the message that's coming from Israel is, we are not interested in stopping this war. We will blockade you and we will kill you. That's basically what they are saying.
So, Doctor, meaning the fear of this spilling into a regional conflict is quite legitimate, according to you?
Definitely. If you look at the action taken on from the Lebanese side by Hezbollah already, and the mobilization of Israel on the border, a few days ago from the Syrian side, there were also missiles fired on the Golan Heights that is occupied by Israel, Syrian territory, basically signaling we are ready for a third front. So in terms of the position that Israel finds itself, it is very precarious, and of course the Americans will be deploying their naval assets and providing support. But then we also had in the last few days Pakistan, for example, threatening, saying, US, if you enter Gaza on the side of Israel, we will be deploying our long-range missiles to support the fight in Gaza. So it's fascinating when you look at how not just these powers are shifting, but actually how on the edge of a major confrontation these days.
Doctor, thank you very much for your insights this afternoon. That's Dr. Petrus de Kock, risk analyst and director at RiskCon, and also co-author of the book Emerging New World Disorder. More news on the other side of this break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, the Thabo Bester escape trial will start in February. At a hearing this week, the Bloemfontein Magistrate Court also announced that it was transferring the matter to the High Court. In a further development, the state has withdrawn charges against 3 of the 12 accused. Charges were withdrawn against prison wardens Natasha Jansen, Mweketsi Ramudula and Tabang Miri. Bester, a convicted murderer and rapist, escaped from prison in 2022 by faking his death in a cell fire. His alleged co-conspirator and lover, Dr. Nandipha Makudumane, did not appear in court as after fainting in the holding cells. All the accused, except Bester and Makudumane and the Zimbabwean national Zanda Moyo, are out on bail. Now, meanwhile, Dr. Nandipha Makudumane has opened an assault case against police following an incident at the Bizamaketa Correctional Services in Kroonstad, where she's being held since her arrest in Tanzania. Makudumane claims that she was forcefully removed and transported from the facility yesterday ahead of her appearance before the Bloemfontein Magistrate Court. She says this was despite having reported being ill and requesting to appear in court virtually. It was later reported that she collapsed in the police holding cells at Park Road Police Station, from where she was supposed to be transported to court. For more on this, we're now joined by legal analyst Mpumelelo Zikalela. Mpumelelo, good afternoon. Thank you very much, as always, for your time. Now, quite a lot happened at those proceedings this week. Charges firstly being withdrawn against the 3 co-accused in the matter. Little information was shared as to why they were withdrawn, but the logical conclusion would be that there was insufficient evidence to link them to the prison escape. Now, the big question is whether they could or can successfully sue the state, as Ms. Natasha intimated.
Yes, they can. Good afternoon to you and also to the viewers. Yes, they can, in which they'll come back and say, you know, as the police, you are given resources to go and investigate matters. Arresting individuals that you don't have enough evidence against is something that you should not do. But most importantly, you should not arrest for the purpose of investigating. You investigate first and then arrest to eliminate these instances of being sued, if ever in another occasion you are found wanting in terms of the evidence that you've had. So she's within her right to then say, for the time in which I was spent in jail, for my name being dragged in all media proceedings and in what proceedings that has been there, please compensate me for what has happened, and also for wrongful arrest or malicious arrest if that would qualify. But I think she does stand a good chance in order claiming within the civil claim.
Now, this is an age-old problem. It reminded me of something the former Chief Justice Mogoeng had stated, that you are clogging the court roll if you're going to arrest, as you say, for instances where you're still to investigate, and then you're having the case postponed phoned over and over again to investigate, but somebody's incarcerated. What should happen here? Because even as citizens, sometimes they put this pressure on the police to act. And then when police act, succumbing to this pressure, we then as citizens will have to pay through our taxes when the state is now sued for prematurely arresting people.
Fixing the problems falls within the police in terms of saying, go and equip them in a manner of investigation. So you'd find that there are a number of things or cases which are going to fall purely due to the investigation not have been concluded or done in a proper manner. So in order to overcome that particular problem, go back and say, do we have adequate or enough training that you provide to investigative officers? Do we have the tools, even the technology, to collect the information which we are going to later use when we go to court? If the answer is no in both instances, then go back to the drawing board and say, maybe let's go back and say police individuals should not train for 6 months or even a year. It should be more than that. Open it up and make it a career like all careers and all other professions in terms of continuous development that should be there, continuous training that should be there, and the collection and learning what other individuals or other countries are doing to ensure that we're able to collect the information as quickly as possible and be able to preserve it in a manner in which it can be utilized in court. If we do not attend the issue of police training, then we are going forever have to this particular problem. And also stop applying pressure to them, especially from the side of the ministry in effecting arrest. Say to them, go and do your job and make sure that you're able to come back with the guilty individuals. But don't put us in jeopardy in which you are going to cause us to lose huge amounts of money through civil claims just because of the hurry to arrest someone.
Then to Dr. Makudumane, she revealed that she was assaulted after indicating that she was unwell and requesting to attend those proceedings virtually. She has since opened a case, as many would know, but this again opens the conversation around an accused person's rights as per Section 35 of the Constitution. Can you take us through these? Because as society at times, we see that the offence is egregious and then assume that or require that the person be treated in a particular manner. Talk us through the Section 35 rights of an accused person.
The most important one is the right to be presumed innocent. So you can't take that away from that particular individual. I always say, up until evidence has been led, proving that you are indeed the person that's committed the alleged crime, then all the rights which are accrued to you, or you should be viewed in a light in which you are innocent. So by doing that, we are then saying to you, we are going to give you the benefit of the doubt if you come to court and say you are ill, for example, because what you are then telling us is that you cannot comprehend the nature of the proceedings which are going to take place. Remember, it is not your legal representation which is at court, it is you who is affected. So the most important person at that particular point in time is the accused individual and also the victim. But the accused in a sense that they need to understand and comprehend that when they say, yes, I understand, what are they saying, yes, I understand to? So in this case, it was something which was very unusual and something which would have never happened, in which a person's rights were then violated in a manner in which they were violated. And she's quite right. And we then have power to then say, I want to open up proceedings against individuals. Even the alleged act of the presiding officer going to the cells so that she's handed enlightenment within the cells, it is not a practice that should be done. Every person should go back and appear in a proper court of law and be treated in a manner in which all other individuals are treated in.
And then still on Nandipa, throughout the bail proceedings, so legal counsel was very circumspect in its approach, being careful not to divulge their defense in the main case. But during the bail proceedings, we got a sense that she's someone that is saying she was forced by Bester to leave the country. What are the prospects of success if they were to develop this particular defense that we heard throughout those proceedings as somebody who was a helpless woman who was forced to commit some of the crimes that she's accused of? How strong is that type of a case?
One of the important elements in any legal case is that you must be able to prove the element of intention. So you must have said, I had the prerequisite intention of achieving this particular crime, hence I acted in this particular manner. Remove the element of intent, then the chances of you succeeding are going to be of the defense succeeding is going to be great. So in this case, even though you can say that you do not have the prerequisite intention, but show us with the actions and show us with the consequences and the manner in which you've behaved immediately after that to clearly prove that it is in those instances in which you feared for your life, you feared for the life of your kids, you feared for the life of your family, and all that you were doing is that you were trying to save them, not because it came from within you to act in this particular manner, and that particular conduct is not in line with it's in line with criminal activities. So it's going to be very important for her to then say, this is the manner in which I acted. It was not true to me. I was coerced, or I was forced, or I feared for my life. But she's going to have a very big mountain to climb in providing evidence and circumstantial evidence and other evidence which is independent, which is able to prove that.
Because the state was already poking holes at that particular defense, saying, then why would you not, upon arrival in the country, quickly open a case against Bester, which she said she has a right to open it at any point or time that she prefers?
Well, that is an argument which can be stated, but you must also remember that it also takes a bit of time in certain individuals to then say, this is the type of act in which I'm going to, or the type of conduct in which I'm going to engage in, especially in this case because it's unique. You're not talking about two complete strangers. You're talking about individuals that have allegedly engaged in a much more, in a relationship, if I may put it in that particular manner. So there are going to be bounds in which they're able to persuade each other and feel compassionate and feel sorry for one another and feel pity for one another. So it is within those circumstances and that particular line of questioning in which you must then understand the level of cohesiveness that has taken place. But it's going to be up to Dr. Nandi Makotoma to then say, this is the evidence which I'm providing to you. Here, expert witnesses, they've proven that I've consulted them on a regular basis, and this is the manner in which I've behaved. Any other person who is in a relationship with another person would have behaved in exactly the same manner. But what I'm lamenting to the court is that it wasn't my intention to do so. I simply did it to protect me and my family.
Then to Thabo Bester, he revealed that he's now bolstering his legal team. He's bringing in Advocate Mshololo as well as Advocate Dalimpofu. What are we to read into this? Because many people were saying Thabo Bester escaped from lawful custody. So he has been taken back to the position he was in before he escaped. If he's strengthening his team, what exactly is he looking to argue here?
Maybe it does see that maybe on a facts basis, there's nothing that he can be able to do, but on a technical basis, then there is. Remember, even though something has been done or a certain act contravenes the laws that we have, the manner in which that particular act is then introduced in court is important because all the technical aspects have got to be there. The manner in which the evidence was collected, confessions have been obtained, the way in which statements have been written, it becomes crucial at the end of the day. So it may be that he's then saying, because I can't really win on this matter based on facts, let me make sure that on a technical basis, legal compliance with any other provisions that is there, I'm able to achieve that. So in order for me to bolster my team, I want to make sure that I have the best of the criminal legal practitioners that are there so that they can be able to poke holes on the technicalities and the manner in which the police have conducted themselves in this matter.
So would that result in perhaps a lesser sentence, that in this instance, when you bolster your team, they will look at the technicalities, procedures followed, but at the end of the day, is he looking for a lesser sentence insofar as escaping from lawful custody is concerned? Because there's another case as to why he found himself in custody in the first place.
I think if the poking holes on a technical basis works, then you can come back with an acquittal. Because when it comes to criminal law, if there's one element which is not there, the court cannot simply say you are guilty. It has to acquit you despite the mere fact that there may be maybe 60% or 40% of the evidence which is facing towards you. So it may be that on that basis is then saying, I want to go for the ultimate price on all bases. Yes, I can go back to jail and remain there. But on the technical basis, in terms of escaping from prison, in terms of murder charges and all the other charges that are there, if I can be able to take care of the technical issues or alleged technical non-compliance that have taken place from the side of the police, I will get an acquittal and I will simply serve the number of years which I'm serving now, and nothing else is going to be added.
All right. Mpumelelo, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That is Attorney Mpumelelo Zikalala speaking to us. We shift our focus to another matter in court currently. That's the first witness in the trial within a trial, which has told the High Court in Pretoria that Muzi Sibiya, accused number 1 in the Senzo Meyo trial, appeared normal when he made a confession to him. Colonel Mhlanganyelwa Mboto testified that Sibiya confessed on the same day of his arrest, that was on the 30th of May 2020. Mboto said Sibiya had no injuries other than those on his wrist due to the handcuffs that were tightly fastened. This contradicts Sibiya and accused number 2 Bongani Ntanzi's version that they were tortured into confession.
Mboto, basically a retired officer who says he took down accused number 1, Muzi Sibiya's alleged confession in the evening of the same day that he was arrested in Tembisa, that's east of Johannesburg. He testified that Sibiya was informed of all of his rights before making the so-called confession, including the right to have a lawyer, which he says Sibiya basically indicated he did not need. And at no stage did he tell him or say anything about an assault or torture that had taken place. Let's take a listen.
Do you understand the warnings which I have given you? The answer for the accused, yes, I understand the warning. Do you wish to make a statement? Yes, I want to make this statement. Have you been assaulted or threatened by any person in order to influence you to come and make this statement? Nobody assaulted or threatened even to influence me to make this statement. This is answer from the accused. If so, by whom were you assaulted and when, how and where did it occur? The answer from the accused, none of the above.
The Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein has dismissed with costs former President Jacob Zuma's appeal against the enforcement of the ruling invalidating his private prosecution of State Advocate Billy Downer and legal journalist Karen Maughan. Zuma was appealing against the Pietermaritzburg High Court order which set aside his summons to pursue private prosecution against Downer and Maughan. Zuma is facing multiple charges of corruption, fraud, racketeering and money laundering. He first appeared in court in relation to those charges back in 2005. Downer has served as the lead prosecutor for the National Prosecuting Authority throughout this period. Zuma accused Downer of disclosing confidential medical information to Maughan. Zuma alleged bias on the part of the members of the High Court. The SCA in its judgment states that there's no explanation given as to what it is about the attitude of judges or which of them demonstrated bias towards either counsel or Zuma. Acting Public Protector Advocate Koleka Kaleka says work is underway to recoup money from axed Public Protector Advocate Busiwe Mkhwebane. But Kaleka says it's up to Parliament to determine whether Mkhwebane should be paid a 10 million rand gratuity benefit following her removal from office. Kaleka briefed the Justice and Constitutional Development Committee in a virtual meeting yesterday.
Kaleka says the Public Protector's Office has faced unprecedented challenges in the last financial year following the removal process of Mkhwebane. She says the office has faced legal costs of over 30 million rand, some of which are being questioned.
The legal costs regarding cases that the PPSA was not supposed to have paid for. This issue was also brought to the attention of the Public Protector. Hence, we discontinued payment of these cases immediately after her suspension. This also involves some of the litigation that took place in the Western Cape. So when we did that, we actually brought that to her attention. Now, the reason why we have not properly finalized these, there has been consultation with National Treasury.
Several of Mkhwebane's legal cases are also being questioned, as well as the unapproved cost of 3.7 million rand to house her at the Bryntirion Ministerial Estate. She cited safety concerns as the reason.
The information on the accommodation is there, but we didn't want to approach Treasury in piecemeal because besides the accommodation, the information, the expenditure on accommodation, we want to check whether there isn't any other. Remember, there were court orders, personal costs that were given to the PP. And at some point, we got a sense that some could have been paid by the Public Protector South Africa. So we want to do all the calculations of every money that we could have paid, that we shouldn't have paid as an institution.
Parliament is also seeking legal advice as to whether Mkhwebane must be paid her gratuity.
At no stage has PPSA even made an attempt to try and say that amount, we will consider paying that amount or whether that amount is payable or not. The determination for the Public Protector and the Deputy Public Protector is not done by the institution, is done by processes outside of the institution. So what the institution has done in this respect is really to approach Parliament. The latest report or communication we received from their legal services is that they were in a process of procuring a senior counsel to give them a legal opinion.
The Public Protector's Office says it's relieved it will not suffer budget cuts, but it says it needs more money to fulfill its mandate.
We need 11 million, at least in the current financial year, which grows to 12 million and 15.3 million in the outer year.
Meanwhile, Gcaleka says her office will determine the costs from Khwebane to repay after finalizing consultations with National Treasury in the next 2 weeks. Khwebane's term of office was due to expire on Saturday, but she was impeached last month on grounds of misconduct and incompetence. A new public protector is yet to be appointed, while Gcaleka remains the recommended candidate to take up the hot seat. Ulelani Philip, SABC News, Parliament.
All right, more news on the other side of this break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, quality assurance body Umalusi says it's ready to administer the 2023 matric examination. A total of 921,000 candidates will sit for the National Senior Certificate exams, set to start on the 30th of this month and end on December the 5th. Umalusi briefed the media yesterday on its readiness to administer those exams. For more on this, we're now joined by Biki Lipota, Senior Manager of Public Relations and Communications at Umalusi. Mr. Lipota, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Just talk us through that briefing and particularly some of the weaknesses that you had identified as per the audit findings.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and good afternoon to you and your viewers. Yes, indeed, yesterday we convened a media briefing to inform South Africans about the levels of readiness of the system to conduct the end of the year examinations. In terms of the criteria that we make use of, we look at the systems across the 4 assessment bodies. Here we're talking about the Department of Basic Education, Department of Higher Education and Training, and 2 private assessment bodies, which are the Independent Examinations Board, IB, and South African Comprehensive Assessment Institute. So the 921,000 or so candidates that you're making reference to are the candidates registered to write the NSC with the Department of Basic Education. As regards the IB, we're talking upwards of 15,000 learners for the NSC, whereas Sakai will be conducting the examinations to around 5,000 learners. Now, the criteria that we make use of to gauge the levels of readiness, we look at the systems to register candidates to write the exams. We also look at personnel that have been employed by the 4 assessment bodies to conduct and manage the examinations. By personnel, we're talking here about people who will be invigilating, people who will be marking the exam scripts, people who will be capturing the marks from the scripts onto the system, and so forth. We also look at the systems that the assessment bodies will be using to certify the learners, because the assessment bodies are responsible for registering and marking the scripts and supplying the marks to Umalusi for Umalusi to perform its quality assurance roles. Generally, Umalusi is saying on the basis of the audit that we have conducted, there are no systemic issues which we have to be concerned about. The assessment bodies are ready. Umalusi is ready to play oversight role while the exams are in session. By oversight role, we mean we will be visiting some of the centers where the examinations will be written, just to ensure that the levels of compliance are high enough. Our concern remain with regards to load shedding, because we have no control over that. But what we know is that the assessment bodies, especially the DBE, has had discussions with ESCOM around the timetabling issues to say, can you please ensure that on the days where especially subjects that require availability of power are written, that you suspend load shedding. We also know that arrangements have been made by some of the institutions to acquire generators, whereas others have actually rented generators. So we are happy that up to so far, there is nothing that we have to worry about.
I know that you also raised concerns around the cheating, which is one scandal that continues to dog that particular time of the year. There was one just last year in Mpumalanga. But beyond this, also protests were mentioned that these could also pose a challenge. Closer to the time, we do find that certain citizens use this very important time when young people are to sit for their final exams to protest on legitimate issues. But then it causes a bit of a problem insofar as the matriculants or those matric pupils who are to write. Talk to us about these other concerns that you raised.
You are right. With respect to protest, we have actually made an appeal, as we've done before, to community members to say education is a societal issue. So each one of us as a member of community, we just need to ensure that we allow the learners to participate in the examinations unhindered, because if protest erupts, that disrupts or prevent some of the learners from accessing the examination centers where they have to sit for the examinations. It is the responsibility of every South African to ensure that the education of our child continues unhindered. And we will continue to make such an appeal. Yes, everybody in the country has a right to express their dissatisfaction, whether be it in the form of protest. But at the same time, we need to be aware that learners also have a constitutional right to receive education. So let us please ensure that we allow them to participate in the examinations. With regard to cheating, yes, there were issues last year. On the basis of those lessons, the systems have been strengthened, because what happens after we have conducted examinations every year, there are meetings that are conducted throughout the year, doing a reflection on the basis of what went wrong, how can we improve going forward. On the basis of the work that has been done, Umalusi is satisfied that the Department of Basic Education is ready. But we want to issue a stern warning to those who might want to see a repeat of what happened in Mpumalanga last year. What makes us happy as a Quality Council is that the Department of Basic Education has actually ensured that both the learners and the parents of the learners, they sign oaths to indicate that, or to make a commitment to say we shall not involve ourselves in malpractices of such nature, because these malpractices carry a harsh sentence. You may be barred from participating in the examination for between a year and up to 3 years. And there are cases in the system which we can refer to. So we are actually making an appeal to people to say, we understand that policing human behavior is a difficult task. So we are saying, let every learner become their own police official, to say, I will not involve myself in these malpractices.
And then what measures are in place to ensure the doing away with the unregistered schools and colleges that keep mushrooming, especially because they pose such a threat to unsuspecting candidates?
That is correct. We want to remind the members of the public about the media statements and the calls that we've made in the past, to say, before you make a decision to enroll yourself with a school, just do your homework. Phone the nearest Department of Education to check if the school is registered, because registration of school, independent school, is a function that resides within the provincial education departments. And once you are satisfied that the school is registered, then you can check on the website of Umalusi to check whether such a school is accredited by Umalusi. So do your homework first. Now, in terms of people who sometimes take chances, like the issues that we reported in June, July through media statements, we are happy to report to the South African public that, in fact, the work that we have done with the South African Police Services has yielded results. In respect of one institution in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, we know that it has been shut down, and the parents of the learners who were made to write wrong examination papers last year have actually received their refund. But the police are continuing to do their work to ensure that the cases that we've referred to them of unaccredited institutions are concluded as speedily as possible, so that the culprits can face the full might of the law. So let's just make sure that we enroll ourselves with legitimate institutions. Because if you go and register and see the examination at such institutions, you will never receive your certificates, because Umalusi can only issue certificates to learners who were made to write at registered and accredited institutions.
Mr. Lipota, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That was Biki Lipota, Senior Manager of Public Relations and Communications at Umalusi. More news on the other side. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, former Transnet chairperson Bobo Molefe has resigned from the state-owned company Minister of Public Enterprises, that's Pravin Gordhan, has replaced Molefe as chair with Andile Sango earlier this year, but Molefe remained on the board. He's calling it a day. Follows the resignation of 3 senior executives, namely Portia Derby, who ends her term as CEO at the end of October. Transnet CFO Nonkululeko Dlamini left the company at the end of September, while Siza Mzimela, Transnet Freight Rail CEO, also resigned. South Africa's population has increased from 51.7 million in 2011 to 62 million in 2022. Statistician General Rusenga Maluleka has handed over a report on the latest results to President Cyril Ramaphosa at the Union Buildings. It has placed Gauteng as the province with the highest population at 15 million, while Northern Cape has recorded the smallest population of 1.3 million. 2.4 million migrants were recorded in the same period between February and May 2022.
Statistics South Africa is mandated by the Statistics Act to collect data for the official statistics and to conduct a census. The organization has reported a gradual population increase in the country since the first population count in 1996.
The population of South Africa as of the 2nd of February 2022 was 62.027 million. And of course, we can show how our population grew over time. Next slide, Melo. We can say that in 1996, there were 40.6 million, and we grew by 10.4% into 2001, where we were sitting at 44.8 million. In 2001 to 2011, we grew by by 15.5%, straight into 51.8 million. And the increase between 2011 and 2022, the increase was 19.8%, which represented 10.3 million persons, and it took us to 62.027 million.
According to Stats SA, South Africa has more women as compared to men, and the number of black Africans stands at 81.4% compared to other races. Almost half of the households in South Africa are headed by females. On the other hand, there's been a decrease in white population from 11% down to 7.3%.
KwaZulu-Natal as of 1996 was the most populous province. It was followed by Gauteng. 2001, KwaZulu-Natal state. In 2011, it was overtaken by Gauteng. As we can see that Gauteng went all the way to 2022 sitting at 15.1 million, followed by KwaZulu-Natal at 12.4 million. But of interest is the Western Cape, which was number 5 in 1996. 2001, the same. It came after KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng, Eastern Cape, and Limpopo. In 2011, it overtook Limpopo. And of course, now it has overtaken the Eastern Cape.
Census 2022 was the first digital count attributed to the COVID-19 outbreak. The report also reveals that access to service delivery has shown an upward trend from 2001 to 2002, with over 80% of households in the country having access to piped water. More than 70% have access to flushing toilets, but there's still nearly 22% of the population that uses pit latrines. Almost 95% of households have access to electricity.
Households that resided in the Western Cape and Gauteng had greater access of flush toilets, sitting at 93.9% and 89.7% respectively. And we can see that there were issues in Limpopo where Limpopo had 3 times the amount of pit latrines without ventilation than the average, the national average.
The report was officially handed to President Cyril Ramaphosa at the Union Buildings. The President commended the gains made, particularly in access to electricity and piped water. He says the report will help government to plan adequately.
Despite the present challenges of load shedding, which we are urgently trying to address, we should be encouraged by the almost universal access to electricity supply. The results that have been represented here underscore the urgency with which we must work towards meeting the aspiration of the National Development Plan and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Just to see that many of our people now have access to electricity, almost 95%. And they have access to water. And we now have a challenge. We now need to increase the number of people who have piped water right into their homes. It is now clear that it is attainable. It is no longer a dream that many of our people had in 1994.
The census data will be disseminated in 3 phases, with the next 2 phases expected to touch on, amongst others, household income. Diabo Seto, SABC News.
And that's where we leave it for today. Have a wonderful afternoon further. See you tomorrow.